Hello, welcome back to HowtoDandD. This is probably, this potentially is the last live stream for the year for me. I'm not going to promise anything. I'm not going to promise anything next week. I am just going to say this may well be the last one for this year. So let's talk about what we can expect from the future, because it's quite an interesting topic. There's lots of stuff to talk about, and I have collected and compiled everything that I could possibly find. And yes, D20 Play is right. I believe that there is a bright future for Dungeons & Dragons. I have a poll that I have put up, and I've put a few options in there, and this time I have included something else for those of you who want to talk about something else. So I have compiled quite a lot of different stuff. Only a fraction of the stuff that I have compiled is in the poll. There's only 4 options in a poll on YouTube when you're doing a live stream. So grab some food, some drink, get comfortable, make sure you're ready, because we've got quite a lot to talk about, and there will absolutely be some discussion and Q&A at the end of what I have to present and discuss. And I have some analysis for you. I'm not just going to tell you about what's going to be happening and what might be happening. I'm going to give you some analysis to sort of give you a good idea of what's going on. So now that that's all out of the way, let's get into it, because there's a lot to cover. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. And I don't want to just talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e. I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons as a whole, because there are a lot of developments with the game itself, Dungeons & Dragons 5e. There's a lot of developments with Dungeons & Dragons full stop in different media, and I have compiled as much information on this as I possibly can, targeted specifically at 2022 rather than another year. So if you were thinking I was going to talk about developments that have been pushed to 2023, no, I'm not talking about those. I'm not really talking about 2024. I'm really only talking about next year. I'm talking about the future of Dungeons & Dragons in 2022. That's our topic for today. That means there's quite a lot to cover. There are a lot of publications that have been finalised as release dates, but there's a lot of stuff that's been left up in the air, and there's a few things that you might not have been aware of because I might have sort of passed you by because you can't keep up with everything. So this is why I am doing this in the first place, is so I can cover pretty much everything you might be interested in with regard to Dungeons & Dragons. So settle back, there's a lot to cover, and never enough time to cover all of it. So the first thing I'm going to say is, with all of the plans, and there are quite a few plans laid out by Wizards of the Coast, not just third-party publishers for Dungeons & Dragons in 2022, there's a lot of publications and there's a lot of changes that are taking place. You've already seen some of them, but there are more changes coming in. And because I've played the game a long time, I can sort of see a pattern that's developed, and so I can highlight some of the things that I see that are repeating. It's part of the reason why I put in the meme, let's return, let's return, this time travel back in time to Dungeons & Dragons in the past, because they are kind of doing that to a certain degree. And I'll explain why I think that's the case. But let's start off with the first thing. The big one that I think most people are aware of now is that in 2024, there is going to be a revitalization or a revision of the existing Dungeons & Dragons 5e rules. Now, whether that is 6e or 5.5, whatever it might be called, whether they call it, it's probably going to be called Dungeons & Dragons Evolved. Okay, that's my suspicion, and I think most people are sort of aware of that you can't label it anything else other than that. So there's going to, I think you're going to see open play testing. It worked really well with Dungeons & Dragons Next, which created Dungeons & Dragons 5e. It would be a no-brainer that we're going to see open play testing for Dungeons & Dragons Evolved in 2022, next year, which I also expect we'll get announcements that it will probably start in January of 2022. Having seen what took place the first time round with D&D Next, that became 5e, it takes years to play test this stuff. I think there's stuff that's already locked in, But I think they have to start early, and I think they know this, and they're probably doing a lot of rush planning in this year right up to this point, and then they're going to release all the information you need to know. Now, what form it takes, I don't know. I would imagine it will probably take a very similar form to the last one, with a beta test followed by a closed alpha test, and then, finally it'll be locked in, and then we'll get your publications later on. So you're going to probably be asked to do a lot of play testing of changes to rules. Now, how significant those rules are, I don't know. But personally, I think this is Wizards of the Coast's chance to make the core rules more accessible to people or children who are 5+ years of age. Okay, online games, because online games, complexity in an online game is a bit of a drag, and then live stream games, which tend to reduce a lot of the mechanical side of things in the first place. But if the game's not targeted at 5+, because a lot of the other additional stuff that's coming is going to be targeted at them as well to capture the biggest audience they can, and because so many parents who play Dungeons & Dragons want to play Dungeons & Dragons with their kids, they're going to need to do something like this. So I think that's very much a possibility. I think this is something that's a no-brainer in terms of where they've been going. They've been slowly working that way. Now, if Wizards of the Coast doesn't make the game more accessible to a younger audience now, they're just going to have to do it later on. If you see all the signposts, it has to happen at some point. Now, whether you like that or not is beside the point. There is a provisor, and I've always said that Dungeons & Dragons needs to have 3 engines. A very simple engine that 5-year-olds can sort out, the core basic standard the standard game that most people who are adults will play, and then the highly advanced one that those people who want light complexity will enjoy. So they need to have really like 3 engines. And whether that's the game that we get is in terms of Dungeons & Dragons Evolved is yet to be determined. But I do think they will need to make a mechanically complex version of Dungeons & Dragons Evolved for community members who like a codified game system. You can't take away all of that from those people who thrive on looking for little loopholes and hidden ways of doing things within a rule system. It's been part of the community for a long time, and I would say that there's still quite a large portion of the community who like doing that sort of stuff. And so taking that away would be a bad idea. They would just gravitate towards Pathfinder Ed Edition 2 and play that game instead, or something else completely different. So codified, but also something so simple that a very young person can understand, because the current game is not simple enough. And I've done a lot of videos on how to play Dungeons & Dragons 5e, and I can assure you, I know exactly how difficult it is for some people to learn to play. Right, now, there is some publications coming up. Let's talk about those. But I'm going to just give you look really quickly. I think there are a couple of things that Dungeons & Dragons Evolved needs to do. A lot more optional rules, making rules that are existing in 5e optional so that you don't have to use them if you don't want to. That means stripping out a few things. I think that we're certainly going to see a revision of the word bonus action. I think that's caused so much trouble. I think you'll find a lot of character classes are not recharged on a short rest. It'll be based off your proficiency bonus rather than a long rest, although it'll proficiency bonus, number of times your proficiency bonus, and then you take a long rest. I think the short rest thing is going out the door, frankly. I think you can expect that to happen. And that'll probably be standardized right across the whole system. There are a few other things that need to be sort of tidied up, and this is their opportunity to do so. Now, obviously, the wording around the long rest will probably be tidied up, because that caused a lot of confusion in 5e. And then some of the wording around the elf trance and some of the other features that have come out. And of course, Silvery Barbs, I'm sure it's going to get some discussion at some point. I wonder if they'll even put it in there. Frankly, I'd be interested. This is their opportunity to really upgrade the monster manual, which really, the monsters don't hold up anymore. They really need something else in there to make them actually a bit more juicy. And then they also need to deal with the Dungeon Master Guide, which does simply not have enough guidance for Dungeon Masters, which is why they keep looking on YouTube and the internet for stuff, because it's not in that book. So, yes, we can talk more about that. Okay, so publications. We've got the Dungeons & Dragons Rules Expansion gift set with this foil treatment that's coming out. It's going to have Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, Xanathar's Guide to Everything, and then Mordenkainen presents Monsters of the Multiverse, and then there's going to be a Dungeon Master screen, and this is released on the 25th of January 2022. Now, the first thing I will say is that Tasha's Cauldron of Everything and Xanathar's Guide to Everything, really these are like player guides. If you have a look at this is really very much a player guide, although there's still quite a lot in Xanathar's and kind of in Tasha's to attract Dungeon Masters. And then Mordenkainen's book is really like races and monsters, so it's appealing to players and Dungeon Masters. They're trying to play both sides of the fence with this. Here's the problem with a gift set like this and releasing it at that time, and the motivations behind it in the first place. They've released it too late. Okay, this was really just a money grab marketing strategy. As far as I'm concerned, the only thing that's really going to be a new book, because everything in the Xanathars and the Tashas will be the same. They have all clarifications and adjustments. Any errata will be included, of course. But the only thing that's actually additional is the Mordenkainen presents Monsters of the Multiverse, which is really much recycled material anyway, just compiled into one place. And I mean, this has been done before. Dungeons & Dragons has had compendiums and the compiling of supplements for years. It's been going on for a long time. But the strategy was to capture this market for Christmas, and they missed Christmas 2021. And now it's being released after Christmas. And it's not their fault that it didn't get released for Christmas release, because there are problems around the world. Getting things printed, getting things transported to places fast enough. Everything is moving a lot slower than it used to be. So there's a problem with putting out a product like this. I think this is one of the products that I dislike the most, frankly. But let's talk about the really important thing, and that is Monsters of the Multiverse. Because what is this? And I had a good hard look at it based off what they've given us in terms of information to try and break down what we were actually getting. So this is what I'm going to say. The Monsters of the Multiverse book, okay, it's going to be separately released later on, okay? It won't be just part of the gift set. You will be able to get it later, and that'll be in 2022, okay? Which is fine, I guess. But, I mean, if you think about it, when are they going to release it? How much of the market can they capture by releasing the gift set on the 25th of January 2022? How many months will there be before we see the actual, just the Mordenkainen presents Monsters of the Multiverse? We don't know. And I suspect they may leave it for quite a while. I expect at least 6 months to try to get sales off this product, which I think is going to be a disaster. I don't think it's going to sell well at all. So this monster book, or this book that we're getting, Mordenkainen presents Monsters of the Multiverse, it's going to have new art in it. Not all of it is new art, but we're going to get new art. There's supposed to be 30 plus or 30 or more updated player character races. So they're compiling all of the races into one place so you can sort of get hold of them. Now, they're all supposed to be compiled for agnostic, so setting agnostic. They're not, if it's a race that's specific to a setting, it's not going to be there. And then we're also going to be getting, which is going to be another quite a large part of the book, and that is 250 plus or more redesigned monsters with improved stat blocks. Now, this is the important thing to consider. What does an improved stat block look like? Well, this is what we've been told so far, and then I'm going to tell you what I think you're really getting. Okay? The monster stat block format is going to change. So we're going to get, if you have a look at the older versions and the newer versions that Jeremy Crawford presented in D&D Celebration, you'll see that the stat blocks, they're larger. There's more detail in the stat block. They are better organized. And if you have an NPC or non-player character who is a spellcaster, they're going to write up any of the utility spells as an entry in the stat block. So you don't have to flip through the player's handbook to find that utility spell and figure out how it's going to be used. Now that means it's going to take up more space. If you start writing out spell descriptions for utility spells for an NPC who's a spellcaster, you need to use more space. That's just a reality. What they're also doing is they're going to include damage dealing spells. They're going to be listed in the action section of the stat block, and they'll be listed as an attack. So you don't have to figure out, okay, what's the modifier for the attack on the spell, or what's the DC for the spell, for the spellcast. It'll all be tied in there and there. It'll tell you how much damage it does. If the spell has tiers of damage, then that should be already tied into it. Although that'll probably be set, because if you're getting an NPC, they're usually at a particular level, so they'll give you exactly what you need to know. You don't have to have a whole lot of books opened up. It's a good idea in terms of saving Dungeon Masters time running monsters, okay? This is the sort of thing they did in Dungeons & Dragons 4e. I'll get back to that. They're also going to remove spell slots from the stat block for an NPC. So you do not have to track the number of spells that have been cast, which means probably a lot of these spells will be at will. They can use them as many times as they like, or there'll be a recharge feature on them. Maybe you roll a 6-sided dice, and on a 5 and a 6, it recharges and you get to use it again. Maybe you'll find that you can only recharges when you roll a 6-sided dice and you get a 6. So there'll be some sort of thing tied into here to make it simple for you to use, so you don't have to track stuff and you don't get confused. Because often, particularly if you're playing a high-level spellcaster, sometimes it was a bit of a drag tracking spell slots, particularly if the battle dragged out, which doesn't often happen, but it can happen given the right circumstances. And then the actual monster stat blocks are getting rebuilt to be tougher. So we know that a lot of the monsters in the monster manual are, and in a lot of the supplements, they're not very tough, they're not very strong, so they're going to upgrade a lot of this sort of thing. Hello, Wally. Wally, how's it going? I'm going to be hanging out with Wally, AJ Pickett, and Dungeon Dad at 2 p.m. New Zealand Daylight Time, or if you were in Chicago or North America, that would be Central Standard Time at 7 p.m. for those of you who want to know. Thanks for joining me, man. Okay, so let's just think about what happens when you build a stat block in that way. Monster stat blocks appear to be returning to a 4E or 4th Ed edition format. Now that means that don't expect a significant improvement in monster lore. What I did notice with the stat blocks and the picture art and the sections they showed us, the samples for the monsters of the multiverse, and then the lore, is maybe they added 1 or 2 sentences. That was it. So you're not going to get a lot. You're still going to have to go and do a bit of research. If you've got older books, or you watch people on YouTube or who put together monster lore videos, or there's a website you get your information from, you're still probably going to have to do that, because one of the problems with 4th Ed edition formatting and having a much larger stat block, which is what we're going to get, it probably won't be as large as the 4th Ed edition format, but it's still going to get bigger, because there's no other choice, given what they're trying to do, is you get less lore. That's a reality. Easier to run for a battle and a combat, but much harder to deal with when you actually have to tie it into your adventure if you're a homebrew, or you're building your own campaign, or you're making adjustments along the way. So you'll still need to go and pursue all that sort of stuff. Now, one of the worst things that we could ever have happen, and I hope this does not translate into the Monster Manual for 2024, is monster manuals for 4th Ed edition are really bad. Okay? They give you all the information you need, everything you need for running combat, and there's never enough information in terms of lore to understand how that monster works in your story, in the adventure, how it will interact with your player characters. I don't think that's a good development. Now, I could be wrong. It is entirely possible. But I suspect I'm not wrong, because a few of the things I said were going to happen, I'm going to talk about very shortly. So I want you to be wary of this. So when you give feedback in 2022, when we get the playtesting, make sure you explain to Wizards of the Coast, we still want the lore, and if you don't reduce the print size and you're still going to take up all the space with the stat block, you've got to solve the problem somehow. Otherwise, we're not going to be happy. So you're going to have to voice that. Okay, now Monsters of the Multiverse, I won't go on about it forever, but Monsters of the Multiverse will most likely have the following races included. I think we're going to see the Satyr, the Owlin, the Haragon, that's the rabbit folk people. The Owlin's just basically owl folk. Okay, we'll probably get the Fairy. I would imagine the Aarakocra will be there. There's a Gensai, Goliath, Azamar, Bugbear. Now, whether that includes all of the sub-races, I don't know. Furbolg, I think, will be there. Goblin, Hobgoblin, Kenku, Kobolds, Lizard Folk, the Orc, Tabaxi, Tritons, the Turtle. I think that's pretty obvious. They already talked about including the Turtle package into this book, so the Turtle will be there. The Githyanki, the Githzerai, the Centaur, the Minotaur should be there, the Grug, the Changeling. Now, there's a fish folk, what's that called? Lakotha, is that Lokotha? I think it's Lakotha. The Feral Tiefling, and then the Yuanti Pureblood should also be in there somewhere along the line. Now, there is also the potential for some not seen races to appear in this book as well, although I suspect they may keep those for the setting books that are going to be released in 2022. Now, in terms of the monsters you should expect, I would imagine every monster that's not in the official Dungeons & Dragons 5e Monster Manual, everything that was in the other supplements, is going to be in the Monsters of the Multiverse. That's what they've been saying. That's what we can expect, which is why there's 250. They're not new. It's all recycled material. It's all been printed somewhere else, just been pulled together into one place. I still think it's a smart thing to do. I still think it needed to happen because there are some people who do not want to buy every single book, and this sort of makes it a little bit easier to have all those things accessible. Okay? Right, so let's talk about some of the races that we haven't seen yet that are going to be probably showing up in 2022. And as I said, it might show up in the Monsters of the Multiverse, but I think it's much more likely to appear in some of the setting books they have planned. And that is the Astral Elf, because that was part of the Unearthed Arcana playtesting. We haven't seen it yet. It's coming, right? And then the Autonome, which sort of suggests Astral Elf, Autonome. We started to feel like it's Planes or Spelljammer. Probably Spelljammer. The GIF, again, it is probably Spelljammer. That's probably going to show up there. And then I don't even know what this is. It's a Hadozi. I think that's Hadozi. And then Plasmoid and the Thicreen. Now, the Thicreen sort of suggests Dark Sun, doesn't it? Now, we haven't necessarily had any races that suggest something akin to Dragonlance. But then again, it is entirely possible that we might see some races that might fit into the Dragonlance campaign setting at the beginning of the year, and that campaign book be released near the end of 2022. So for those of you who are like, oh, none of those sort of fit kind of Dragonlance, and I really want a Dragonlance, I wouldn't freak out just yet. I think that's entirely possible. I think those races I've just spoken about, I think you're definitely seeing them in 2022. Okay, I don't think there's too much we need to worry about. We're probably going to see them in 2022. They have such a fast turnaround in terms of their Unearthed Arcana to publication. It's actually much more quick. It's a lot faster than it used to be. They used to take their time, but under current management, things are moving much more quickly. Now, there's another book that's going to be released in 2022, which some of you will be interested in, and some of you will not be interested in, but I'm still going to talk about it, and that is the new adventure book, Critical Role, Call of the Netherdeep. Now, this is supposed to be released on March 15th, 2022, and it's supposed to be designed, it's an adventure book, and it's not a campaign book. It is listed as an adventure book. So don't say it should be a source book. It's not a source book. It's not a campaign book. It's an adventure. Okay, and it's supposed to be for character levels level 3 through to 12. So that introductory phase has been eliminated. I'm not surprised because if anything, Matthew Mercer's probably involved, and so he's probably done this quite deliberately. It's supposed to include all new artwork for Exandria, and we're going to get a poster map in this adventure book. So I don't even know this place myself because I don't really follow Critical Role anymore. I used to watch the the very beginning of Critical Role where they have the sponsorship when Sam was doing his funny little thing, his skits. I used to watch that and then I sort of switched off because I got too much to do. So the poster map is supposed to be of, is it Ankh-Herald? I think it's Ankh-Herald. I don't know the place. There's supposed to be more magic items, creatures, and rival NPCs. So from the sounds of it, whatever this adventure is, you're going to be having to deal with rivals who are going to be competing with you or against you in some way. It's an interesting dynamic that sort of presents. I don't know much more than that, other than it's supposed to have a very sort of, the netherdeep is sort of described as being an underwater cross between the far realm and the deep ocean. So an underwater campaign, we haven't really seen that sort of thing before. So that seems quite interesting. It's also supposed to span continents. So there's a lot of travel from one continent to another and then down below the sea. So I think it's a very interesting product coming out. I think it's a smart move. Now, even if you don't like Critical Role, because I've done a review on the Critical Role book that was released that Matthew Mercer was the key writer on and developer for, okay? And it's a very good book. Even if you don't like that book, no, it's not Wild, it's I can't remember the name of the book off the top of my head. But in any case, if Matthew Mercer is the lead writer, and he probably is, and Wizards of the Coast doesn't interfere, it should be a very well-crafted book based on Matt's past publications. Matt's the sort of person who puts indexes in books or insists they be there. An index in a book that's a reference book, even if it's an adventure, is really useful. And I expect the same sort of thing to take place. I also think that what you'll also find is, based on that, all of the magic items that were published in the last Critical Role book were really quite clever. They were quite advanced in terms of their ideas, far more advanced in their concept than a lot of the standard stuff that Wizards of the Coast puts out. And then, of course, the last Matthew Mercer or Critical Role book squeezed so much in. It was a huge book. It was so dense. You really had everything you needed. So even if you don't like Critical Role, I still feel like this is going to wind up being a pretty good adventure based on his track record with actually writing stuff up. And that's a good thing to see. I know that they are really keen to get Matthew Mercer to take over from Chris Perkins, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. And I think that it's just unlikely to ever happen. Although I'm sure Matt Mercer likes the idea to a certain degree, but he doesn't need them anymore. He might need Dungeons and Dragons. Matthew Mercer might need Dungeons and Dragons, but Gary and Dave have done their work. It's there. So yes, I think that Wizards of the Coast needs Matthew Mercer more than Matthew Mercer needs Wizards of the Coast, frankly. So it's good that they are collaborating on this. So I expect good things from this book. I really do. Now, I don't believe that it will be a book that will be good for a beginner to run. Frankly, I find that he builds stuff that's quite advanced. So yeah, I think it'll be an intermediate to advanced Dungeon Master book in terms of an adventure. Right, so Critical Role has also got something else. Very quickly, I'll talk about it. Critical Role has an animated TV series, or a Critical Role animated series. I mean, it's not, I don't know, it's going to go on to streaming, isn't it, basically? It's an animated series called The Legend of Vox Machina. Or is it Machina? I think it's Machina. Machina. And it's being released on the 28th of January 2022. So you don't have to wait too long. It's pretty close. And it's going to be released on Amazon Prime. Now, what I would like to point out to you with regard to this, even if you don't like Critical Role, this is the first time that a Dungeons & Dragons cartoon series has been made in a very long time. And the original Dungeons & Dragons cartoon series that was released, when the kids went from the real world to the Dungeons & Dragons world, was super popular and continues to be very popular. And it's the sort of thing that we should have seen sooner. And it hasn't happened for a variety of different reasons. And it's going to make a lot of money. I really do think it will make a lot of money. Now, depending on what they've done with it, if it's keyed so that the younger audience can watch it as well, and it still appeals to the Critical Role community and to an older audience, I expect great things from this. So even if the Dungeons & Dragons movie that is going to be released in 2023 is a bomb and doesn't work very well, I think this particular animated series is going to be very good. And the reason is that the key people involved are not primarily business people. Although they are now running a business, they're creative people. And they have pulled around them all of the creative people that they like the most and think can do the best work. So it's coming from a very different point of view. That's why I think it's going to be successful. Why I think it's going to be incredibly successful. Now, season 1, I understand, will have 10 episodes, and then season 2 will have 14 episodes, which is quite a lot for an animated series, particularly since it was all crowdfunded on Kickstarter, and they didn't get their money from somewhere else. I imagine somebody will try to pick them up, but will they need them at this point? Given that I think it will make so much money, I suspect they won't need anybody to fund them to make a future series if they wanted to. You may find that it only needs 2 series and seasons, and that's it. And then they move on to something else. Who knows? So I expect great things from the animated series coming. Now, what about back to Dungeons & Dragons 5e? Now, I did say to you when Candlekeep Mysteries was released that you should expect more anthology adventure books. And as it happens, we're getting an anthology adventure book. It is planned for a release in 2022. We don't know what it is, but we know it's going to be an anthology, so that's a collection of small adventures that you can plop into your campaign or your homebrew adventure or piece together like Lego bricks, okay? And it has been proven to be extremely successful with Candlekeep Mysteries. That book was a bestseller. As soon as it was announced and it was available for purchase, it became a bestseller on Amazon. And frankly, I'm glad to see that it did. And they have paid attention. They have realized that this is actually something people want. People don't want these long arcing campaigns which may have too many strings to them and may come off the rails. People like to build their own stuff. So give them the bricks, the Lego bricks, and let them build their own toys. Perfect sort of thing to release. And my understanding is from the developers is that the anthology book in 2022 will not be the only one to be released, that there will be future anthology books to be released over the years from this point on, which is excellent news. Hello, Pale Rider. How's it going, Overboard DM? Nice to have you. And we've got Epic Level Craft here. Thanks for joining us. Right, so now that we've talked about anthology books, and I told you it was going to happen, and it's going to happen. We know it for sure. It's happening. So short adventures, I think this will be the new standard. Instead of the long story campaigns we used to get, I think shorter adventure books, shorter adventures and a compiled book are going to be the standard for Dungeons & Dragons moving forward. It is something that has been hugely popular in third-party printings, where you have a collection of adventures and a paper cover. I mean, was it Kobold Press has done quite a few of them, and they've been very, very successful. They're good books too. They're not just rubbish. So yes, that's good news. Now there's also something else which I wasn't completely aware of, and I wasn't even sure you could purchase or pre-order this thing. There's a new Dragonlance novel being released on the 9th of August in 2022. Okay, it's going to be called Dragons of Deceit. I think that's it. Dragons of Deceit. It's going to be by Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weiss. They've already written a second book in this series. There's going to be 3 of them. This is the first one being released in 2022. Now, what that story looks like, I don't honestly know. I think it's good that they have brought them back into the fold, and they didn't steamroller that project, because that would have been a huge shame to have lost that. So I guess the question is, for those of you who remember the older Dragonlance novels and liked them, and then things sort of changed a lot with Dragonlance, and a lot of people didn't like what was going on, what is going to happen with this series of books? Because Tracy and Margaret are saying that this sort of puts a cap on the whole story arc and world in a sense. So whatever they're doing here is to sort of finalize everything, because they're getting on now. They're probably not going to be around once this series of books is written. There's a good chance they'll never be able to write anymore. They'll probably retire. That'll be the end of it. They can only do it for so long. So yes, I am interested to see what happens with this. I think there's a lot of people who will be quite excited. Now, one of the things that Tracy and Margaret didn't say anything about a Dragonlance campaign setting book for 5e. And it's not like they would be told, because they had no idea that there was a Van Richten's Guide to Ravenloft campaign book. They had no idea that that had actually been released. And even when it once was released, they still didn't know it existed. So, and given that they very much spearheaded Ravenloft, I mean, they are the creators of Ravenloft, it does make sense that they probably won't know if there is a Dragonlance campaign setting book coming. That being said, they have said that there is going to be 2 old campaign settings being released in 2022. What do you think they are going to be? What are we pretty sure they're going to be? I think, given everything that's happening with Unearthed Arcana, all the developments that have been taking place, all of the things that Joe Manganiello has been dropping on social media, I think we're definitely high probability that we're going to be seeing Spelljammer. Spelljammer is probably the source book coming out as a campaign setting of some kind, or Planescape. It's going to be one or the other. It might even be a combination of the two. Okay, whether it's a campaign book or an adventure book or a combination of both, we don't know. In terms of player options, I expect there'll be races in there, at least. At the bare minimum, we'll see some races. Whether we see any other class player options like feats, spells, magic items, it's hard to know. And we probably won't know, because if they put magic items in there, they won't really be play tested through Unearthed Arcana, more than likely. If there are spells, maybe, but I think you can be pretty sure there's going to be a Spelljammer book coming out in 2022. The second one that I think is highly likely based on everything that's been going on, is the Dragonlance book. Whether that's a campaign book or an adventure book again, or a combination of the both, and what sort of player options they have, we don't know. There's not enough information at this point. But I am pretty sure, given all of the different campaign settings that are out there, that those are the ones that stand out the most, that the Dungeons & Dragons design team, Wizards of the Coast, has probably picked up and said, these are the ones we need to focus on, primarily because they are much more different to everything else. I know a lot of people are like, well, what about Blackmoor and Greyhawk? The problem with Blackmoor and Greyhawk is they're so generic in their medieval fantasy that they don't stand out enough. I think that these are the 2 campaign books that will come. I think those are the ones we'll see. Now, given that, and those publications, they did actually say that there's likely to be a cameo of a 3rd old campaign setting making its way into the books that are published in 2022. So what I suspect is going to happen is we'll see some reference to a third old campaign setting in the Anthology book. Now, I could be wrong, but I think the Anthology book will have an adventure in there that is harkening back to one of the older campaign settings. And that campaign setting, my guess is it is going to be Dark Sun. I think the fact that we have unearthed arcana for the Thicreen, I think it's very, very likely that Dark Sun is going to make an appearance. I don't think that they needed to play test a lot of the elf races, variations that existed for Dark Sun. I don't think that's going to likely be necessary as far as they're concerned. So we won't see, I don't think we'll see them if we get Dark Sun. And it's probably not going to be coming, Dark Sun as a campaign setting probably won't come out till the following year, 2023. But we probably will see some reference or an adventure that takes place in Dark Sun. Now, if it's not Dark Sun, I still think it's most likely to be Mysteria. I think Mysteria is much more likely than Greyhawk or Blackmoor. But those are all possibilities. Now, one of the things that Wizards of the Coast design team has actually stipulated with regard to these new campaign books that are coming out, that aren't really just straight adventures, is they're using a new format or an unusual format and layout. It's being used for these campaign setting books that's never been seen before. So I'm assuming this has never been seen before for Dungeons & Dragons 5e, probably never been seen before in older versions of the game. What that means is hard to pinpoint because I've got no reference point to sort of think about. I think that's very exciting. It is also a little bit concerning because we don't know what it's likely to be. Usually with Wizards of the Coast, all of their books try to have a little bit for the Dungeon Master and a little bit for the players in some respect. Whether they're trying to go a bit more even Stevens or 50-50, or whether they're going more one way than the other, who knows. But that does mean that we are likely to get a slightly different format. I hope what they do with a new format is they give you more maps, more locations where you can literally just pluck it straight out of the book and use that, most of the structure that's already been built, to just fill in the gaps right up to, I mean, even if they have locations like Mythic Odysseys of Theros had locations with a map and sort of descriptions of those locations briefly, and sort of villains or creatures that might populate that location. Adventure hooks was a big part of it. How to build them into a story was there. Now, if they do that sort of thing, because what Theros did was wonderful, if they do that with the new campaign books, I will be very pleased. And I'm sure that other people will be very happy as well. That's my expectation on that. Okay. So now let's talk about some of the other things that are less known, and that is the Dungeons & Dragons has new digital tools coming, okay? So they've talked about digital applications, digital tools that are going to be revealed in 2022. Not all of them, but some of them. And I think what this means is it's not clear what the technology is going to be, but I suspect we're finally going to see Wizards of the Coast put out a virtual tabletop. Now, whether they are going to buy up an existing virtual tabletop or whether it's been built from scratch, that's hard to know. I think buying out another virtual tabletop is not beyond them. I think that could be done. Or we're going to see some online tools like D&D Beyond. There's been a lot of talk about, will D&D Beyond still exist, and will Wizards of the Coast buy them? I don't know that they can. I think D&D Beyond might be too much of an entity in themselves, but given that the whole staff team just about changed over there at D&D Beyond, maybe this was a hindsight for the fact that they were going to buy up D&D Beyond. Or they've got their own stuff lined up, which means if you've got D&D Beyond, things might be a bit tricky now. So I would imagine that some of the tools will be free, some of the tools you'll pay for, and there will definitely be some sort of virtual tabletop. I think I think they understand that given our the way the world is right now, and the number of people who are having to play online and then have gone back to playing in person, now have to go back to playing online again, that they need to have that in place. So I think Wizards of the Coast is going to have another shot at making this work. Their track record for doing online tools and virtual tabletops is appalling. So if they pull it off, I think it will be because they bought up somebody else's product, frankly, rather than they did it from scratch themselves. Now, there's also a mystery that they've put out there. There's supposed to be 2 completely new campaign settings in development. They didn't say they're going to be released in 2022, but they also didn't say they weren't going to be released in 2022. And it's supposed to have content that has never been seen before. So these 2 new campaign settings, I don't believe are Magic the Gathering. I don't believe they'll bear any resemblance to some of the older campaign settings we've seen, the older worlds we've seen. I think that they are, if you see any of this stuff, it is going to start to show up in unearthed arcana documents in 2022. I think that'll be the first time we sort of see what's going on in the background. Now, what often tends to happen is that if somebody has their own homebrew campaign and world, and they're on the design team, often their world gets ported over to being published with Wizards of the Coast, obviously with consent from the person. And a lot of people won't say no to that. Frankly, the idea of having your own campaign setting and world, if you're on the design team, ported over, or it might be somebody else, who knows. But I suspect that's what we're looking at. We're looking at something that has probably come from somebody close within the design team who's developed something, or it's something they've been working on for a while. This is all very speculative. I like the idea we're going to see something completely new that we've never seen before. I am quite happy that they are actually going to do that. And I am hoping that they go in a different vein. I hope they go in a vein that is so unusual to what we normally see that it sort of stands out. What that would be, I mean, would that be more science fiction-y? Would that be more a world which isn't dominated by humans? I don't know. I think that's quite likely, given what's been taking place. Now, things I think you need to expect in 2022, because it's already been happening and it will continue to happen. I would expect more changes to Dungeons and Dragons lore around monsters and creatures. I think some of it will be refinement. Some of it will get completely removed, which will annoy a lot of people, I'm sure. And some of it will be expanded. I think all of that is going to likely happen with the Dungeons and Dragons lore around locations and monsters. Some of it will be spared here and will be a product of just trying to fill out the world more and make it more interesting, which is good. And then some of it's probably going to be a product of social media pressure or the social climate that we currently live in, putting pressure on them to adjust and change things, which is not such necessarily a good thing. Sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad thing. I am always a little bit concerned because sometimes I feel like the social pressures that are being put on big companies to make changes aren't always got the right motivations. Sometimes it's quite legitimate and sometimes it's not, but it can be a bit hit and miss. But yes, big changes in Dungeons and Dragons lore. That's what I expect. So I'm sure it will drive AJ Pickett, Dungeon Dad, Jordan and Mr. X batty. And I look forward to having the opportunity to talk to them in the future about what takes place, because I know a lot of them have been talking about this. I know Dungeon Dad Josiah's talked about it. AJ's been talking about it quite a bit. I haven't talked that much with Jordan or Mr. X about it, but I suspect that there's going to be a lot going on. Okay, now, for 2022, fitting the Magic the Gathering worlds into the Dungeons and Dragons multiverse, I think we're going to see a roadmap or a map of some kind like this coming out. Whether it's in a book or whether it is just announced that this is what we're doing, I think some integration of those worlds into the multiverse of Dungeons and Dragons. This is where Wizards of the Coast has been going for some time. I don't actually have a problem with it because all it does is just add more to what we already had. As long as they're not removing stuff that we like, but if they're adding more, I think that's wonderful. That's the sort of thing we really want. Now, some of the Magic the Gathering worlds you won't like, but I'm sure you will find many of them that really do give you a lot of juice and opportunity for exploration. I'm very excited about running a campaign in Theros, but because it's pretty much a rip-off of Greek mythology, okay? But there are other ones that do stand out, and I think there's a lot to be said for integrating Magic the Gathering worlds and the existing multiverse of Dungeons and Dragons. I expect a lot of unearthed arcana, reconnecting us to stuff that has been done in the past or stuff that hasn't been done in the past, but I would imagine unearthed arcana will play a huge part next year. Now, they may even decide that unearthed arcana is not the right way to play test their material and they have a different format. I don't think that's the case. I think unearthed arcana will be the play test site. I mean, whether they call it unearthed arcana D&D evolution, who knows? But I would imagine that it will have a much longer period connected to unearthed arcana for playtesting this stuff, because they've got a bit of time to do the playtesting before they have to set it down in print. And I'm sure we're going to see a re-look at all of the character classes, all of the races to a certain degree, backgrounds, feats very much so, and spells. I think we're going to see quite a large amount of material being revisited with any kind of adjustments they thought they needed to make. And character classes will probably take up the biggest element of that, with, I would say, spells following, not so much races to a certain degree. I am kind of interested to see if they start taking away dark vision from some of the races. I mean, they do have the opportunity to do this. If they wanted to, they could remove dark vision from some of the races, because almost all of them have it now. And you may have noticed that some of the newer races that came out, like the Haragon and the Fairy, they don't have dark vision. Like, really? They don't have dark vision? So I think it's very, very likely that races may lose dark vision unless they are a creature that spends predominantly most of their life underground or in the dark rather than running around in the sunlight. I think that's very, very likely. That also means that maybe drow won't all have superior dark vision. Some drow aren't necessarily going to be living underground. Maybe not all of the elves will have dark vision. I think these are things that might very well happen. Now, there's two more things I want to say. And that is, I suspect a much more aggressive book release for 2022. The frequency of book releases for 2022, I think, is going to be breakneck. What we've seen so far is they keep adding more and more and more. There's like an extra book being released every year. Every time we go past another year, a new book. Okay, there were so many books released in 2021. I would imagine that we're going to see even more in 2022. One of the things you'll notice is the design team are just not available to do a lot of stuff nowadays. They are too busy working on whatever these projects are. Okay. So if you liked more content, I think you're going to get a lot more of it. But they're also probably looking at, if we release more books, we have to make sure these books are things that people will definitely buy. So there's going to be a very strong focus on making sure they put things in there that people will actually use rather than it sitting on your bookshelf. Lastly, and you're probably all aware of this, I expect a lot more YouTube channels on Dungeons and Dragons, a lot more collaborations between YouTube channels and roleplay game channels. Look, I've been working on this myself, and I'm noticing that some of the other YouTube channels, not quite to the same extent, a lot of them are not quite as organized, surprisingly, But it is happening, and there is a lot of crossover taking place, and therefore you're probably going to see a lot of the people that you watch on YouTube a lot more talking and discussing all sorts of things a lot more. And I can assure you that the current Dungeon Master Roundtable that I've organised with the likes of, so we've got Wally DM, we've got AJ Pickett, we've got Josiah from Dungeon Dad, we've got Dungeon Class, we've got Dungeon Masterpiece, that's Ryan, we've got No Fun Allowed, that's Trevor, we've got Steely Sam, for those of you who know Steely Sam, we've got Fry Minis, that's Eric, we've got Roll for Initiative, that's Dawn. All of these are regulars. We've had Jordan on a couple of times. We've had Mr. Rex on twice. They're a bit harder to nail down for various reasons. We've got, who have I missed? There's probably somebody else. Give me a second. We had Flutes and Loots. We've had Dicely D&D, Tenny's awesome. He might have a small channel, but he's such a lovely guy to work with. I spoke with Esper the Bard last week, and I can assure you that Esper the Bard is on board for doing more of this. We had a ball. It was not what we had planned to do, but we had a great time. Yeah, you're going to see people collaborating together on a regular basis for a long, long time. And there are people lined up. The waiting list for this Dungeon Master Roundtable stuff is immense. And I had hoped that we would get more and more people into this in the future, and somebody else would run some tables. But I can assure you that there's a strong focus. Shrek D&D, I'm going to be working with him shortly. Beyond the Screen, Aviard, he's certainly part of it, although he'd be part of the sort of the European tables, or European table. We've got Fulked, Loots and Dice. Jordan from Flutes and Loots, that's Jordan, yes. Now I should say that we should certainly see him in the future. We've got Pack Tactics coming in, for those of you who are interested in Pack Tactics. I'm working on some smaller YouTubers, and there's been a lot of people who want me to approach Jacob from XP to level 3. He's a lot harder to get hold of, and I don't know that he's necessarily up for this sort of thing, but we're going to still try it. And we did manage to pick up some pretty big YouTubers along the way. Maybe not the biggest ones, but hey, I tell you, we'll take what we can get. So expect so much discussion from all of the people that you are following or watching on YouTube and on social media. That is definitely going to take place. And I'm looking forward to it. I think that the future for Dungeons and Dragons is extremely bright. Even though a lot of us might be saying, well, there's some things that have taken place that I didn't like. There's a lot of things that are taking place that are really cool, that are really, really cool. And if we put pressure on Wizards of the Coast to make sure they don't mess up the stuff we like, I think they will actually listen. I really do. I really think they will pay attention, because I do get the feeling they are doing that right now. And I am pleased to say that that is a good sign. Now, if you enjoyed this, fantastic. I know this is not normally what I do on my channel. I don't normally do this sort of thing. Maybe I do it like once a year if you're lucky. But I thought this was a good time to discuss it. And if you enjoyed this, fantastic. I have hundreds of videos for players and Dungeon Masters. You are welcome to go and check out, so please do if you want to. And if you want to support the channel, you can through Patreon. The Amazon affiliate link's down in the description. Everything I talked about that you can pre-order is in the description if you really wanted to do that, or just wait. I'd just wait. You can wait. That's all good. You don't have to worry about any of that sort of stuff. I have a merchandise shelf underneath my videos. And just watch my videos. That's fine. That supports the channel as well. Make sure to do the usual YouTube things like share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button to be notified when I go live. And I go live every week. And when I publish new videos, which I also do. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Somebody's thinking, oh, this is the end. But it is not the end, because I always save something for the end. It is Q&A, questions and answers. Let's have a chat. You guys have been working your way through this poll here, I imagine, making sure to put in your vote. And I am very keen to see how many people put down something else. 30% something else. Is my eyes going to be any good today? Right. So we'll leave the poll open while I'm doing the Q&A. We've got a bit of time. I don't have to be in the dungeons. Oh, I forgot to say, the Dungeon Master Roundtable is going live today. You can watch it live today, okay? We're going to be on Twitch TV, we're going to be on YouTube, we're going to be using DungeonDad's Twitch TV and his YouTube channel. So if you want to go and watch him, you can. And who is going to be part of the panel? We're going to have AJ Pickett, DungeonDad, HowtoDandD, and we're going to also have Wally DM. And look, if there's anybody within the Dungeon Master Roundtable who are sort of like the central hub, who have really made this work, this whole venture, across different channels, you know, you can find these videos on their channels as well, not just mine. It has been Wally DM, AJ Pickett, who's been huge, so helpful in making this work, DungeonDad, and I have to say a big, huge thank you to Dungeon Class, who have been very busy recently, but they have been instrumental in making this work as well. And No Fun Allowed. Trevor over at No Fun Allowed. He's a young guy, but God, does he know his stuff. And I am looking forward to us doing more stuff in 2022, and it will continue. Okay? And what time will this live streamed Dungeon Master Roundtable take place? Well, if you're using New Zealand's daylight time, it would be 2 p.m. In the afternoon. If you're in Chicago or Central Standard Time, it's not daylight there anymore, is it? It would be 7 p.m. If you're on the, if it's Pacific, is it Pacific Standard Time? That's sort of Los Angeles. It would be about 5 p.m. And if you're on the, is it the East Coast? That's like Miami. It's 8 p.m. And how long will we go for? We're saying probably 2 hours, but if you put AJ Pickett and DungeonDad in the same place, it's usually 3 hours long. We will take some breaks, and we're going to talk about a lot of questions. So my suggestion to you is, come up with some good questions. Chuck them into the chat. You never know. You might get those questions answered. We already have some predetermined questions. Some very hairy ones, by the way. Not all of them. Some of them are just fun, but some hairy ones. Okay, so let's just type in here, #question, if you guys have got questions, and then we'll go through the chat, because that's what we do here. Question, please. And pump that in. I'm not going to pop it to the top because that's where the poll is right now, and I think the poll needs to stay where it is. So, new glass of water. So don't forget, you can be part of, you don't have to talk in the chat, you can absolutely just take part in the poll. Okay, so D20 Play, now look, here's a channel 2, and D20 Play and the Dungeoneers pack, Josh, you're going to see them in the future. You're going to see a lot of people. I mean, the problem is I just can't remember everybody right this very second. So, you know, but don't think we have stopped. It's not like the table has grown to a certain size and like we just stop introducing new people. If we can get people involved, they're gonna take place. Okay, they're gonna be part of it. Okay, now, so epic level craft. Hello, how's it going? Well, it could be called 5+. Yes, Dungeons and Dragons might be called 5+, but it might not. It might not. Who knows? Who knows what we'll actually get? Okay, so Wally has a question. He's been waiting forever, and I know he's at work, so if he's still around, he may be driving home. Question. Actually, no, he's not driving home, isn't it? I'm pretty sure he's not working today, and that's why he could take part in the round table today. Question. Do you think monsters from the campaign books will be included in mordenkainens? For example, the the Sioux monsters from Tomb of Annihilations. Absolutely, I do. I think that's a very good point. Not just the campaign books, but also the adventure books. I think they will pull all those monsters from the adventure books into this one Monsters of the Multiverse. I think that's very much likely to be the case, for those of you who are wondering. So that means that if really what you wanted was just monsters and the races, then that's pretty much what this book is, Monsters of the Multiverse. So you don't have to go and buy every single adventure book to get access to those monsters. You don't have to go and buy them on D&D Beyond so you can get access to them that way. They'll all be in one place. That's very much what they've been talking about. So yeah, if you think about what's in Volo's Guide to Everything, what is in Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Tasha's Guide to Everything, and some of the other campaign books, I think they're going to pull it all into one location. The question is do they pull stuff that was in the Ravnica book? I think a lot of the stuff in the Theros book translates over easily into Dungeons and Dragons wherever you go. But will they pull over the monsters from Ravnica into this Monsters of the Multiverse? I think it's very, very likely. When you think about how many monsters are actually in those books, it's not that many. So I think they will pull everything over. Kenda, question, Pale Rider. Well, look, frankly, as I said, if we get a Dragonlance campaign book, which I think we'll get a campaign setting for it. I really do. Okay, it's probably going to be in 2022. And if it's not, it'll be in early 2023. They still have time to play test Kenda and Unearthed Arcana next year and still release the book near the end of the year. That is totally possible. Raphael Roman, how's it going? I think I made a mistake. I brought Mordenkainen, Tome of Foes, and Volo's Guide to Monsters. It appears that the new book will be a combination between the two. Yeah, well, it's taken all the monsters from there and putting it all together. I don't think it'll have the kind of lair stuff that Volo's Guide to Everything had. I don't think we'll get the monster lore that you might expect in this book. I don't think they're going to have space. If you think about how much they're putting in there, I really don't think that they're going to squeeze in a lot of lore. I really don't, which is a bit of a shame. But apparently they reckon that these sorts of books don't sell. I think AJ Pickett would say not true, and I think that marketed the right way and changing the way they do things, it can work. Remember, people don't just kill monsters. So sometimes you need the other stuff as well. Pale Rider. I've never watched Critical Role, but I'll watch the animated series. See, this is my point. Now, Pale Rider, now I've known Pale Rider for a while. He's been following my stuff for ages. And this is the thing, is that an animated series that's sort of Dungeons and Dragons flavored, or a Dungeons and Dragons world, with a whole bunch of characters played by people who are very invested in it, and they've got storytellers to sort of make it work. So it's not just, when you think about Dragonlance is a product of somebody else's campaign world. Somebody played Dragonlance as a campaign world, as a game, and it became a campaign setting, and then it became a series of novels. The same with Ravenloft, exactly the same sort of thing. So for it to happen for Critical Role, it makes perfect sense. And I do think that animated series by Critical Role is going to do extremely well for that very reason, that it will transcend not just the youth and the Critical Role community, but those who are a bit older, have been around a bit longer, played the game a bit longer. I think they'll be invested as well. Hello, Joe. How's it going? Overboard DM has a channel, by the way. By all means, go check him out. Does miniatures, terrain. I know he hasn't played Dungeons and Dragons for a little while, but yeah. Tommy, how's it going? Tommy Lee Blank. Thaco rules. Do you think that they would include Thaco back into the game? I don't think they would. I think that an ascending armor class system is probably here to stay. I don't think that charts and Thaco are coming back. It is. I mean, I played tabletop war games, so I played 40k Warhammer Fantasy. Really, really significantly in any way, I played that kind of tabletop wargaming, much more than I ever played Dungeons and Dragons. And then I gave up the tabletop wargaming and I moved sort of exclusively to role-play games and Dungeons and Dragons, Fate and other things like that. And I think that charts, having to remember how a chart works is difficult. I think ascending armor class is probably here to stay. Sorry, guys. Never forget, never forgive. Bargle must die. Okay, nice one. Dear. Wrestling comes back and takes over the world like he should have done in the first place. Well, should he? Really? Was that his story? I'm not saying that it's not going to happen, but who knows? Does he come back? Does wrestling come back as a lich? Oh my God. Terrifying concept. Pale Rider, definitely not Mysteria. Too many problematic things. Laugh out loud. So, yeah, I was having a discussion with some people about problems in Dungeons and Dragons. And yes, it is a conversation that, yes, Mysteria might cause a little bit of trouble. But look, everything is apparently causing trouble right now. So, what's wrong with something else? They would just make adjustments. But yeah, I think you're probably right. I don't think Mysteria is necessarily going to happen. I think Dark Sun is much more likely. But anyway, I think you're right. Yeah, Spelljammer, Planescape. I think those are definite on the horizon. Yeah, I know a lot of people would love Greyhawk, but again, I think Greyhawk is just too generic. It's like the Faerun. The Forgotten Realms is very generic in many senses. Greyhawk is even more generic than that is. So yeah, Dark Sun, but how slavery and racism. John Cartwright, you're right. There is a lot of slavery and racism. So how would they deal with it in Dark Sun? Do you know, I'm a little upset that we can't have depictions of racism and slavery in our Dungeons and Dragons game. We know that it's slavery. When you have a campaign world where there's slavery, your player characters are usually fighting against slavery. They're not trying to enforce it, right? They're trying to fight against it. And those are the stories that we still need to keep. Do you know what I mean? That the fight against slavery should be there, and the fight against racism in our Dungeons and Dragons game should be able to be retained. Just because the word slavery and racism shows up shouldn't be a good enough reason to eliminate it from our games. They still need to be there. We don't want to lose sight of that. Okay? If we remove these words and we never use them and we never talk about them, then it's not like they go away. Every new generation, every new baby that's born has to learn all this stuff all over again. Okay? Like, slavery is not a good thing. You know what I mean? It's putting somebody else down and it's subjugating them. So I don't want to get into that sort of discussion, but I think removing it from the game is a bad idea. If you think about movies, some of the best movies have topics where they deal with slavery and racism. Okay? And removing it is a bad idea from any game. And of course, even if Wizards of the Coast removes it from the game, people are going to put it back in. It's just how it works. Fight the good fight. Now, Pale Rider. I'm trying to be quick about getting through this. It would be nice if the start at the Gazetta series of Forgotten Realms, or even a box set update. Now, there's not going to be any. They already said no box sets. A whole world, or get from this. Look, I don't think we're going to see the Sword Coast. I frankly do not see the Forgotten Realms or the Sword Coast playing a heavy role in any kind of development in the future. I think they have realised that people are sick and tired of the Forgotten Realms and they want something else, and I think they're going to give you something else. Okay? Retooling. Look, the safe space is, using racism in your game, play it out as the fight against racism. I think that's really where it is at. But you're right, companies are having to protect themselves a lot. Okay, Negative Space. How's it going, Negative Space? I wish they could be an alternate virtual tabletop that you could do things that Fantasy Grounds did with 4E. Yeah, I don't know. I am not a fan of using virtual tabletops, but I know a lot of people really do like them. Would it really be back to gritty though? That's the thing. Hi Tommy, how's it going? Chris Perkins. Well, Chris Perkins has been busy. He's been working very hard apparently. Hi Patrick, how's it going? They can always do a darker, grittier book and put a parental guidance on it. Yes. So I talked to somebody about this not so long ago, that something like The Curse of Strahd should really have parental guidance on the front cover. Parental guidance required, because some of the topics in there are pretty heavy. Okay. Don't remove it. Don't just no, we can't have children being eaten, turned into pies and eaten by the locals because the hags have decided to do this sort of thing. No, you can have it, but you want to put parental guidance required or mature audiences required, so that people know that they're dealing with something that is not your norm. And you can laugh all you like, but I think it is quite a reasonable thing to put on there. Don't remove it, just warn people. Hello, is it Aaron? Aaron? Would be nice if they revised Greyhawk and continued the timeline of famous characters. I think we've already seen some famous characters pop up. There is, I just don't see Greyhawk necessarily. I keep hearing people saying they want Greyhawk back. I think Greyhawk and Blackmoor, if it does show up, will show up in a couple of years. I think they will eventually do it, but I don't think 2022. Pale Rider, don't care what Wizards of the Coast say. AJ, Rex, Jordan Law is canon. Look, they are fighting, trying to figure out how to do their videos. I talked to them about this sort of thing. They're trying to figure out and get their head around what do they do with all these changes with the law. And AJ's of the opinion that you integrate the old and the new, and you present both to a large degree, and that's sort of his approach, which means that everything's going to be much longer. Okay, D20 play, which are already starting. Okay, are you looking for lots of polls which are already starting? I am trying to get people invested in communicating. I know a lot of people don't want to use the chat, but if I'm going to do a live stream, one of the things I really liked was the polls, and so I'm very much going to keep using polls in live streams, so that people who do not really want to have the YouTube name pop up or even comment, they don't have to do that. They don't have to put themselves out like that, but they can still be part of the discussion, because this is what the discussion is really, right? Like, what are people looking forward to? What is likely to happen? Bring back infravision. Yeah. I kind of agree to a certain extent. I just don't think. I think that it's adding complexity they're trying to avoid. I think it would confuse people if you say dark vision and infravision. They're gonna lose it. Okay, Wally's got a question. Here, Wally DM's got a question. Do you think that monsters from the Magic the Gathering books like Ravnica and Theros in the Monsters of the Multiverse? Yes, I do. I think Theros, definitely. Ravnica, I'm not too sure, but I think they probably will. I think that Ravnica and Theros is now part of the multiverse for Dungeons and Dragons. And so it does make sense that we will see them in the Monsters of the Multiverse. I kind of answered that question already. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to happen. Including the Critical Role campaign book that was put out. That Critical Role book had monsters in there. I think the Critical Role world, Exandria, is now part of the multiverse of Dungeons and Dragons. So their monsters are going to get ported over as well. We're going to get them all. I I actually thought the push to Multiverse was a push to incorporate Magic the Gathering. No, I think it's a push to incorporate a lot of additional stuff. Magic the Gathering, yes, but many more. There's a few people release indie comics about their RPGs to gather a fan base before the release of an actual game. Yeah, it's testing the waters, which it makes a lot of sense. Testing the waters does. DJ, how's it going, DJ? DJ Tygon? Is it Tygon? I want them to go back to alternate cover versions prior to mordenkainen. Volo's Guide, Xanathar's Tyranny, and the gift set for a year or two. Back to... Okay. Yeah, look, they are not stopping the alternate covers. They've got an alternate cover. I don't think they need an alternate cover for the expanded D&D rules set that's coming, because it's already got a foil coating. It's already there. So it is going to be slightly different, the cover at least. I'd like a live stream roundtable. Well, you're going to be getting it today. It's happening. I know we've been talking about it for ages. Mr. Cold Raven, how's it going? Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, is a soulless corporate husk that has fired all its true creative people. The future of D&D is independent creators. There is a tendency for that to be the case, yes. There's a lot of freelance people working for them now. Negative space. I agree, Mr. Yeah, that's pretty much the same sort of thing. Keith, hello Keith, how's it going? I don't know if anyone has pushed your Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. How are you today anywhere in this there, sir? Yes, I'm doing a lot better. The weather is warming up. I can actually talk for a long time without losing my voice. I'm not drowning in snot. So Merry Christmas to everybody and Happy New Year. And I don't know if I'll do a stream next week, but I might. It just depends. I don't get to rest I don't get to stop yet. Do you know what I mean? I'm working through Christmas. For those of you who are unaware, I have a job. I work with people with brain injuries and mental illness, and you just don't get to close up shop when you want to. So I have to work through. I take a rest after. And then there'll be a lot of painting. For those of you who wanted me to do painting live streams, you're going to get a lot of painting live streams in January. Okay. Raymond, how's it going, Raymond? I love to see weapons feel more unique in the next version. Now that is something that Ted from Nerdiversion did discuss. And I think it may happen, it may not happen. I know a lot of people have been talking about it a lot. Like, there's one shield. So, but one of the things you've got to remember is they have to be careful not to make the books bigger. They just need to make sure the books, the player's handbook, as they play test them, the monster manual and the Dungeon Master Guide, the goal is to make them better, not bigger. Okay? And not completely different. Although the Dungeon Master Guide could probably be significantly more different. And even the monster manual. And maybe the player's handbook. Okay, alright, revising that, change a lot of it. But they can't make the books much bigger than they already are. They're already very large books. Yeah. Hello, John B. Did you read Goodman Game remaking B1, B2 books? Yeah, look, Goodman Games has been remaking a lot of the old adventures. And yes, they make very good products. And Kobold Press is just firing on all cylinders. So yes, I expect great things from Goodman Games. But you also got to understand that Goodman Games is not really creating new content. They're looking at older content and upgrading it so that it's a bit easier to run and it fits in with Dungeons and Dragons 5e. To be fair, a lot of those old adventures you don't have to convert them over. You could just pick them up and play them as they are. Okay? I haven't bought any of the Goodman Games books simply because I just use the older versions. You do not need to upgrade them. They're fine. You'll figure it out. It's not that hard. You really don't need to spend a lot of time with them. I've had this discussion with Trevor from No Fun Allowed and with Josiah Dungeon Dad, and a few other people who have run some sort of pre-made adventures, you don't really need to mess around with them. They're fine as they are. But that's not to say that Goodman Games is not doing good things. Okay. And D20 Play says, count me in. Don't worry, it'll come. I haven't heard from Rivers and Overboard DM. Yes, Joe. I'm waiting for you guys to get sort of. I have to kind of work through the list, and then things develop from there. But don't think that I haven't been thinking about bringing you guys on board. Things like a good microphone and a good webcam are vital, and a good computer and good internet. Otherwise, if you try to put 4 different people from all around the world in the same meeting, it just disintegrates. So you've got to have good equipment. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. It's why we don't normally do it live, because we knew it would just deteriorate into a mess. It's why we pre-recorded everything, to put less strain on the internet and less strain on our computers. But we're going to give it a go today. Pale Rider, you have a question. Mysteria and Dark Sun settings. How much, if any, do you think will change in those settings to make them more acceptable? I think parental guidance will go on there. I think there'll be a lot of big disclaimers, like proper disclaimers on them. And I think they will probably have to change a lot. But I also think that the underlying message that you'll get with something like Dark Sun is that Dark Sun is sort of, the stories revolve around the fight against slavery and racism. And that would be the focus. You know, that is actually, if you want to promote that as a corporation, why would anybody be against that? Let's have a game where we're fighting against slavery and racism. If they go with that vein, I don't think it'll be too much of a problem. Mysteria, same sort of stuff. Okay, they just need to work their way into it. Negative Space, I'm more interested in general role-playing and fantasy information, and am pretty much not interested in Wizards of the Coast products. I understand. Now, it's funny you should say that anymore, but I really like your review of stuff and the Roundtable. Keep it up. Now, before you all disappear, I should make it clear that I did buy this book. This is the Game Master's book of non-player characters. And there's a third book by Jeff Ashworth coming out on puzzles and traps. It's coming out next year. And I'll get that book as well. So I'm going to talk about this book in a live stream. And I will do an actual flip-through review of it, a proper flip-through review, so you can sort of see what it's like. So for those of you who are not interested in Wizards of the Coast, don't worry. I do have some stuff by Kobold Press that has adventures, small adventures, that I will also talk about. So that'll happen as well. I have a book already. It's sitting on my shelf. I just have to do it. I got this book finally. I've got Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. There are things in here I really like and things in here I'm not so happy with. So I'm going to talk about that for sure as well. So you can be assured that you are going to get something that isn't just Wizards of the Coast, and you're going to get a lot of book reviews. I will talk about the stuff that you might find useful or not. Okay, so that's definitely on the cards. And I think Fizban's, for me, I think out of all the books, Fizban's and the Candlekeep Mysteries is probably my favourite for 2021. But you won't see this till next year. I just don't have time. I've got to have time to sit down and do this properly. Okay, it's not going to be a seat of the pants. I don't know what I'm talking about. And then I'm sitting on this book, The Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is an adventure. And a lot of people got confused. They thought this would be a campaign setting, and then it's not really. It is an adventure. And then the Strixhaven book, I'll get it eventually. I'm not so keen on that book, but anyway. So I don't know what to make of The Wild Beyond the Witchlight. There are things I really like about it and things I'm just so confused by. So it's very hard for me to sort of gravitate to this. It's why I've put it off. I won't put it off forever. I will talk about it eventually. So you will get some information. I just don't know when. Okay. As for Strixhaven, it's going to be a little bit longer. I'm not really in a rush to get to that one. Okay. Okay, so John B. Question. Please, did you read Goodman Game Remake B1, B2 books? If you do like it. Look, seriously, I think a lot of the adventures that they have selected, some of the old adventures that Goodman Games has done and remade, they've done a much better job of laying it all out. But that's fine. You know, when you work off somebody else's work and you redo something, it does make a lot of sense. You can do it better. Yeah, if you put the time in, you can do it better. That doesn't mean that Goodman Games is better than the people who originally made those adventures, which is sometimes something I hear, and I'm like, pay attention, okay? Just don't shite all over or shit all over the people who came before them. That's not the way to go. But yes, Goodman Games still does very good things. Okay, Joe, how's it going here? Fred, if you ever start doing FaceTime videos, I'd love to join the group. I have a boatload of Dwarven on its way, finally getting my Kickstarter from over a year ago. So, Joe, if we get you on, I know you spend way too much money, but yeah, I'm looking for people who can do their own live streams. So what you have to do is because one of the things I noticed when we brought people into the Dungeon Master Roundtable is when you put them together with people that that are quite a lot bigger, that they get really nervous and they start to sort of freak out a little bit. And so, so getting them comfortable with themselves and live stream will make that so much easier. Otherwise, we had a few people who sort of stuttered a lot and didn't know what to sort of say, or talked too much, or didn't talk enough. And so, do some live streams, Joe, mate. Do some live streams. You can keep it focused. Always, if you do a live stream, always have a topic that you're going to focus on. You can still do Q&A. You can still answer questions, but it is something that is vital. And it's one of the things I look for, is people who can deal with that. So don't think that I haven't forgotten about you, Joe, because I haven't. Negative space. I also find it hard to support a company who doesn't put a discount code for digital copies in the physical copies of books they sell. Yeah, it's because they license to D&D Beyond, and D&D Beyond is not, connected to them. It does cause a whole lot of frustrations for people. Got to go. No problems. D20 play. I'm sure you've probably already gone. I'll work my way through this as faster because if I don't, I'm going to get in trouble. Hello, John. What do you got here? I think instead of watching some actors playing for 3.5 hours or more, get your friends and play and make your own memories. Exactly. That's why I don't really watch live play. It's not really my thing. I try to watch a lot of the stuff people create on YouTube if it's sort of different, but otherwise I don't watch it. Hi, Raymond. Question. Do you want reworked weapons? For me, I think maybe a slight expansion. I do not have a lot of problem with the weapons that they have in the player's handbook. I think that just some of the weapons we used to have would be nice. I'd like to see the buckler come back, and I'd like to see the tower shield come back. Those are things that I definitely would like to see come back. And there was something else. The throwing star. I like playing monks. I miss the throwing star. I don't want to just throw darts. I want the throwing star. Those are the sort of weapons that I would like to see come back. Pale Rider. And when I was a preteen. Yeah, I've played the original Ravenloft as well, but not when I was a preteen. I was definitely an adult. And I played Ravenloft using the 5e rules, actually. Although I almost played it. Did I play it with the 5e rules or the 4e rules? God, I can't remember. It's been a while. It's been a long time. I did it ages ago. This is right back when I was doing like the... gosh, I can't even remember. It is so long. It's been more than 7 years. It's been a long time. John, what do you got here? I know the Book of Vile Darkness for 3rd edition had a warning on it. Yes, and it should. I think some books should have warnings on them. And it makes sense. As you point out, it has been done before. For anyone interested, Mr. Welch have made a free-to-download player's handbook for Mysteria and is working on a DMG, Dungeon Master Guide. Oh, okay, didn't know that. Good to know. Thank you for letting us know. Thanks, Pale Rider. Okay, so I am not moving fast enough. The one true donut. I use channels like H.A. Pickett, Mr. Rex, prompts for my DM prep. If Wizards of the Coast no longer considers older lore canon, I don't care. The older stuff is filled with loads of cool stuff. That's right. A lot of the older books had much smaller fonts, so they could fit in a lot more too. And the newer books have got a much larger font. It's great if you got old eyes. I totally get it. But sometimes you need to have more in there. And you will see more monster lore videos or live streams on my channel. And I can assure you that they're not going away, those channels. They have every intention of firing on all cylinders. If anything, they take this as an opportunity to take advantage of anything that Wizards of the Coast fails to do. Negative space. I hope you get a lot of joy from the season, even if you're working. Look, it's all right. I am going to have a good time after. In terms of what my workload is like at my 40-hour, it is the sort of thing that you guys would not want to subject yourself to. Okay? It is a nightmare. But it's all right, okay? I only have to do this for like 3 years, and then that's it. No more of it. It stops. It'll be over. And we'll move on, and you'll see something very different from my channel. You may finally see a Dungeons and Dragons HowtoDandD show that's streamed every day. It wouldn't be I wouldn't be full time, but 3 years from now, it's very, very likely. Neil, hi Neil, Ryan, how's it going? What would improve the game is having the threat of character death instead of characters being overpowered by really dying. Okay, yep. Games become dull, not having threat, plus keeping real-world politics out. Okay, so, yeah. Real-world politics, I mean, I don't want to go into that. I know what you mean. It's one of the things I think might well become an optional rule, and that is the death-saving rules. I have videos coming in the future that will talk about all of this stuff, about rules that could be just ripped out of the game or turned into optional rules. And I think they may well do this. That may well happen. So yeah, let's see. You guys will have an opportunity to please make sure you take part in the playtest for the D&D involved. Otherwise, you will be your voice will be lost. Hello, Mark Lewis. How's it going? Sorry, Fred. I didn't know you were on. No, that's all right. That's YouTube. It happens all the time. I was actually watching your videos and prepping in Curse of Strahd campaign, due to start in the next year. Okay. So for those of you who are thinking, Fred has stopped doing Curse of Strahd videos. I haven't. I've just changed the way I'm doing it. I know that people running Curse of Strahd like to change stuff. So that's why I did the Living Wall. That's why I've done the Vampiric Mist. It is also why you're going to probably get the Crypt thing. Because these are things you can include into your campaign. Curse of Strahd, people like to make changes. All good. So we're going to give you the tools. And a lot of the stuff is very much from that campaign setting. And there's not necessarily an awful lot of information on them. So yeah, it's going to happen. And there are some other discussions that will take place. I am actually trying to find somebody who will talk about Curse of Strahd with me in a video. Weekend Master Electrician. I have all of the Goodman game books and think they are great and easy to follow. Yes, they are probably much easier to follow than the original books. So I would agree with that. Raymond, question. What skill check you feel is missing in 5e, like cooking check or a loot check? Geez, there's a knowledge check that has come up a few times that I don't know what to do with this. And I'm still, off the top of my head, I have not been able to pinpoint how it needs to be phrased. I think everything else is fine. There are times when nature and survival sort of overlap a little bit, and I'm a little bit confused in terms of skill checks and what to do with them. But there's a knowledge check that keeps coming up, and I kind of feel to a certain extent that I don't want to go back to what we did before. I think that would be a mistake. But I still have not decided on what it should look like. And it would be a knowledge check. Like, you know, we've got history, religion, arcana, nature, and there's one more. And I just don't know how to sort of, I don't know how to word it yet. If I ever do, I'll just do a video on it. Okay, overboard. What do you got here? I brought a great computer, finally. Okay, and a pretty nice webcam. Great. I have excellent internet, but it still need a good mic. That's the one you need to get. I'll get it soon. Good. I am looking forward to finally getting to actually talk to you face to face. Well, at least video face to face with you, Joe. The day will come. We will get to hang out. Neil Ryan. That's something I should point out. If you wanted to hang out on Discord with me, I tend to hang out in Fryman's or Eric's Discord group that he does on, he's got a Spud Club. And I tend to hang out with Eric and his wife and Josh there while I'm working. I'll still be working and doing stuff, but while I'm working, I usually hang out there. So if you go and check out Fryman's and you want to actually sort of talk with me on video chat, it's probably where you'll find me, for those of you who are unaware. Neil, what do you got here? The Game Master's Book of Random Encounters is a must-have. Yes, I've done a review on that. I did a live stream. It is a great book. There are some problems, but I still think it is a book that you want to have, okay? And that you will continue to use for years. I sent one of these books to one of the patrons who'd been supporting me for years, and he loved it. He enjoys the book. And I think what Jeff Ashworth does is magnificent. You need to check his stuff out. What do you got here, Joe? Fred, flipping through the book now, please and thank you. You are sure of it. You are welcome. Okay, you are most welcome. And it's going to happen. I'm going to talk about it for sure. Don't think I won't tear something apart, because you know I do that sort of stuff. Negative Space. I think a great video idea where you talk about your favorite books of different categories is I trap ideas, NPCs, DM advice, third-party monsters, etc. Okay, all right. I will think about doing that. Okay, I will consider that. I know people have said that before. I've just never been sold that I thought people would really be that interested. But I've been putting up a lot of polls, so maybe I'll find out. Okay. Pale Rider, Strixhaven and Witchlight is a no for me. Just not my type of game. That's fine. Totally understand. I get it. I get it. Look, I haven't actually looked at the Strixhaven book, but the Witchlight book, I'm still not sure how to approach that book. I really don't know how to feel about it. It's a hard one for me. Okay, Pale Rider. There is a fine art about live streaming with other people. Exactly. You have to know when to talk and when not to. With inexperienced streamers, they talk over people too much. Yes. Look, even experienced streamers have a tendency to do that. I'm not even going to say who that is, okay? But I can assure you I know who it is. And there's more than one. So, yes, it is a fine art. You do need to have a structure to it to make it work. And you need to have somebody who does the lead off and then prompts people so that you don't have this everybody getting in on the chat. Question from Joe. Did you see how big that Tiamat miniature is? Oh my god, it's amazing. Barely fit into my trunk. Yeah, I did. I think it showed up on Fryman's, Eric's channel. Fryman's does a lot of miniature reviews, and yes, he had it. He pulled it out, and he didn't even put it together. It's so big. It'd take up so much space. Okay, so John, what do you got here? Good stream, Fred. Got to go. No problems. You go for it. You go do what you need to do. Please remember, we're going live today, Dungeon Master Roundtable in a few hours. Weekend Master Electrician. You need to step up to a nice, what's that? Stetson hat. You reckon a Stetson hat's the way to go? I don't know. We'll see. I do have a lot of hats. I just, at this time of the year, wearing a hat's actually very, very difficult for me. But I do it because my hair just looks like a crazy person. And there's not a lot of hair in the right place. It's one of those strange things. Dear. All right, Pale Rider, you got a question. Go, you guys better quick. I'm going to get out of here otherwise. I'm almost to the bottom here. Question. I'm not totally educated on what they are doing with alignment. Okay, all right. What, if any, effect will that have on the outer planes which are categorized by alignment? That's a very good point. It is a discussion that I remember having with AJ Pickett and a few other people as well. I think that ultimately, I don't know, but here's a take I have on it. I think that some of the planes that are alignment driven will stay alignment driven, but that there will be room for movement for creatures that leave the plane of fire or water or air or earth or whatever else it is. There will be room for them to adjust their alignment as they break away from that plane. Because the very plane itself affects your alignment, doesn't it? And that's sort of part and parcel of all of that. So, and alignment, look, a lot of the alignment changes have taken place because of social pressure, social media pressure, and the environment, and whether you like that or not, is, you know, I'm not happy when those sorts of things happen, but they do happen. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. I remember when this happened to Noddy and Big Ears, which I grew up on Noddy and Big Ears, and it ruined Noddy and Big Ears. They stopped publishing that children's book. It happened to Rupert the Bear, and I was like, oh, what happened to Rupert the Bear? Like they just got lost. So what would happen to Dungeons and Dragons planes with alignment? I think one of the things that, and it's always missed when you look at older versions of alignment, is Gary has always said in alignment, this is sort of the typical behavior, but it's not exclusive. And look, Captain Courageous did a fantastic video on alignment that explained the importance of alignment and the differentiation that you can have with monsters and anything revolving around alignment. And the reason for having alignment, it is not a straitjacket. It is a tool, like many tools, and people just don't know how to use alignment. How it affects the multiverse? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't ultimately know the answer, but it might be a question that we could ask AJ Pickett, Dungeon Dad, and Wally DM today. I will mark that down as a possible question. How's that sound? It'll probably come up anyway. Okay, weekend master electrician. How do you handle metagamers? How do I handle metagamers? Well, with regard to, look, if somebody memorizes all the monsters in the monster manual, I change all of my monsters anyway. They won't know how a monster works at my game because I change everything. Nothing in the monster manual will challenge my group. With new people, I wouldn't bother. So it won't help you metagaming. A lot of my monsters don't necessarily follow the alignment that is listed on the stat block. I often will include creatures and monsters that are outside the norm. Okay, so, and that's quite common for me. I also have some that fall straight within the alignment that has been listed. But a lot of the monster stat blocks are going to go unaligned. You'll see unaligned rather than there being an alignment specifically. I think you're going to have unaligned. It'll be the standard, very much so. Metagaming in terms of knowing the rules. This is just a conversation you have with people who say, look, what you're doing is metagaming. You need to play the game as if you're not metagaming. Now, there are problems because some rules and some spells and some features deliberately have metagaming built into the game. So you use that spell or feature, you have to metagame. I don't like it when they do that. but it does exist. I accept those or I ditch them. Usually my group does not ban stuff. I'm usually not the one to say, this is what we're doing, because they won't accept that. Recently, my group, what did we do? I eliminated the grappler's feat. I said, I don't want to use the grappler's feat. And they said, well, what if we want to grapple? And I said, you can, but you don't need the grappler's feat anymore. Okay? And I explained how I would do it. And then we had a discussion about Gloomstalker Ranger, because apparently Rangers suck, right? It's rubbish. Gloomstalker Ranger just bulldozed the entire campaign. And we sat down, and the person playing the Gloomstalker Ranger and the guy who built the Gloomstalker Ranger for my player, they sat down and they said, I think we should ban this from our table. I said, really? And they said, yes. And they said, what about everybody else? And they said, yeah, let's get rid of it. So we don't play with the Gloomstalker Ranger in our group anymore. So, yeah. So yeah, it's not about getting rid of fun, it's getting rid of the things that will cause problems at the table. And if metagaming is causing trouble for you at the table, you need to have a discussion. It's always a discussion. If you can't have a discussion about these things, then there's a problem there. And you need to point that out. Like, why can't we have this discussion? All right, anyway, moving on. I do have videos that talk about metagaming anyway. Pale Rider. I like the alignments in Palladium books. Oh gosh, better. They work... I think they work better. Palladium, good lord. Don't say Palladium with AJ around. AJ loves Palladium. He's very much part and parcel of that game system. Their books, he's played a lot of it. I think he play tested, he created some stuff for them as well. Yeah, so I know what you're talking about. Look, I like you know what I really like about understanding the difference between good and evil? And really this is what we're talking about, good and evil, ultimately, is I like the Star Wars saga concept of dark side points, where based on what you did, you would earn a dark side point for what you did with your character. And eventually, so you always started off with 0 dark side points, and you would earn them over time. And eventually, if you did too much, your character went full evil, fully to the dark side. I really love that concept. I think that's great. Happy summertime, Fred. Thank you, Mark. What else? Gosh, I need to get going. We did a few campaigns that DM decided your alignment based on how you play your character. Exactly. And that's how it really should be. It's actually probably smarter to leave alignment off, play your character, and however you're playing your character, we'll mark down that's how your alignment is. And if you change the way you play your character, then you change your alignment. Do you know what I mean? Rather than set your alignment and then try to play to the alignment. A lot of people just can't do that. That is too hard for them. Hi, Ben Puffer. How's it going? Something I missed from past editions were robust rules for monster templates. Yes. I think we might start seeing a few monster templates in the future. Do you think this may be a future focus? Yes, I do. I wouldn't mind if the monster manual had 5 less monsters and had 10 pages of template information. I think it would be a sidebar. I think we'll see more sidebars and variant options. But then again, if they change the way, this is one of the things that can be very concerning, and this is looking at 2024 really. We're not really talking, look, they're going to be play testing all this stuff apparently, but I think a lot of the monster stat blocks have kind of already been set in concrete, I suspect. I don't know for sure. But if you try to do what they're planning to do with stat blocks for monsters, which means they must get bigger, thank you, Overboard DM, thank you, Joe. I'll see you later, and you're welcome to the live stream. Yeah, see you later on the live stream. Yes, come and join us for the Dungeon Master Roundtable. Look, ultimately, I think when it comes to making a template, it makes a lot of sense. But if you change the way stat blocks are done, better organized and putting more stuff in there, it takes up more space. So therefore, there's less space for stuff. My concerns is we might lose some of the monsters from the monster manual that exists. So how do they do that without chopping away text? Monster lore. I don't want them to take the monster lore out. The monster lore, if anything, needs to go, we need to have more of it rather than less. And the only way that that is going to happen is during the playtests, people say, give me more monster lore and stop focusing on making the stat blocks the focus, okay? And the other thing that we need to also think about, and that is, ultimately, in the end, with all of this, what is the most important thing that we want from this? Okay, do we really need to have the text the size that it is? Marketing surveys probably have indicated that text size is the best one to have. But if you look at some of the older versions of the game, the text was quite small, which allowed them to put far more in there. Okay. Yes, do it. Save those questions. You can come and ask them. Right, so that's what I think in terms of that. Yeah, I don't really want them to have less there. I just want them to make what they've done better. And the monsters need to be tougher. For absolutely sure, they need to be made more tough, stronger, able to do some stuff that really sort of makes a difference. Look, I need to go because I'm going to be back live in about 2 hours and I need to get my ass into gear. So I apologize if I am taking off. Thank you to everybody who showed up, because you have been wonderful. I am shocked that so many people showed up just before Christmas for this live stream. You guys are awesome, like fantastic. I'm so pleased that it was I would say, a very successful stream. Okay, so for those of you who are sitting here and thinking, oh, Fred's ending. No, it's not the end. This is just the beginning. Okay, but I have to go and save my voice before I lose it, because otherwise I will definitely lose my voice. So thank you for showing up. So wherever you are in the world, whether you are, it's the morning, the afternoon, the night, or the wee early morning, please look after yourself, your family, and your friends. Be nice to your neighbours. Have a great Christmas and a happy new year. And hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. Mark, you can watch the live stream on Twitch TV or on YouTube using DungeonDad. If you look in the community tab, you will find in the community tab that there is a section specifically there that allows you to jump onto his channel. And it gives you the times. I also listed in the information on that, and I will probably put up a link just before we go live. So it's in about 2 hours. We're going live in about 2 hours, okay? Yeah, pretty much, yes. Yeah. Okay, so that's me. I gotta get going.